Hello and welcome to Artifacts, the monthly magazine show that talks about the arts in Minneapolis. It's brought to you by the Minneapolis Arts Commission and the MCDA. I'm Phill Lindsay, your host. We got an interesting show today. We're calling it Stepping Out because all the guests in one way or another are stepping out. Later on we'll be talking with Busara Whittaker, who's a dancer, and she'll be in the second part of the show. And right now we've got two guests who are stepping out with a new radio show that is interestingly called Artifacts. We've got with us Nanci Olesen and Teri Blackmore. Welcome. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you.
I had seen a notice about your new show, which is on KFAI radio, and I happened to notice in big, bold letters that it's called Artifacts. And I was just thrilled and excited that there's not one but two Artifacts shows in the Twin Cities. Could you tell me a little bit about the show, what you do, what you talk about, and who you have on there?
You start.
Well, we started working on this show in January, so it's just been 2 months that Teri and I have been working together, and it replaced, in a certain way, the old Java Jive that used to be on KFAI for about 5 years. It was kind of a vintage radio piece there. And we interview 4 people, or we have 4 interviews per show.
About 20 minutes long.
20 minutes long.
In these 2 hours.
The way we've been working it out lately is that Teri and I each take 2 interviews, and we schedule the interviews and kind of plan ahead about a month in advance, try to figure out what's coming and who we want to interview. And
it's on Thursday mornings from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock.
Now, we might as well get the plug in right away. What are the call numbers for KFAI?
90.3 FM.
And that reaches where? What's the audience for KFAI?
Minneapolis, definitely. Some outlying suburbs. Some of St. Paul. The farther away you get from the Fauché Tower, the harder
That's
it
where
gets.
you transmit from?
That's where the transmitter is, yeah.
Well, that's great. And you've been doing it a couple of months. Who are some of the guests you've had on, and what are some of the plans for other topics?
Well, let's see. Some of the people we had. We've done a couple theme shows. I'll start with those. One of our favorites was St. Valentine's Day, and Nanci had some people come in and read poetry.
I got together a group of friends of mine, Steve Epp, Kevin Kling, Ben Krailkamp, and Megan Grundy, and I called everyone ahead and asked them to please choose some Valentine love poetry. The more passionate, the better. And so we started out the 9 o'clock hour with different voices reading Shakespeare and Neruda and all those kind of poets, many different kinds of poets. And we spent a good half an hour reading love poetry. And
with lots of love music in between.
Yeah, so that was kind of a nice thing. And that group of people enjoyed themselves so much, and we talked about the fact that we'd like to come together again. And one of our plans is to do something like that this spring and do some spring poetry, or May. The theme, there's a lot of poetry that's based on the month of May.
Well, it makes a lot of sense here in this climate. We all go a little bit cabin feverish, I think, by the end of the winter. So that you do some theme-oriented, like the whole couple hours is kind of
we're trying to.
We had other Valentine's Day themes.
We had Julia Carey from the
Theater Exchange.
Theater Exchange, and they were doing a benefit, Othello, for Chrysalis, which is a woman's center. And so both a woman from Chrysalis and Julia came in, and they did a really nice interview talking about the misogamy of Othello and how that relates to today's contemporary society. And so that was very nice. We did. We had a couple people come in who talked about the history and the significance of giving cards and flowers. And we finished up with, for example, this one show, barbershop quartet that came in and sang some love songs.
You had them there in the studio?
They were right there, all dressed alike.
That's one thing Teri's really been great at, too. She kind of books a lot of the music interviews that we do. And on St. Patrick's Day, right before St. Patrick's Day, we had in the Clumsy Lovers, a local band here. And so whenever there's somebody live coming in to play music, we lift out the big, huge table that's in the center of the
small studio,
carry it out, and pull the musicians in and lift the microphones and
well, it sounds like Clumsy Lovers would have been a good guest on the Valentine's show too. Maybe.
Yeah, they would have been great. Yeah.
Well, now you raised the question. You've got some musical background, or what do you bring into your show yourself? What got you here?
I had never done anything like this before. I'd done a community radio show in my hometown, Champaign, Illinois, on another community radio station, and it was basically what you hear mostly on community radio. It was as a music show. It was records, and it was just music. It was a morning show. But when Takeout was defunct, I kind of thought, and I'd never seen Takeout, but I really felt there was a need to get more of this type of programming out. So
Now, Takeout was a show
Right.
on
NPR.
That's Minnesota Public
Minnesota
Radio.
Public
Right.
Radio that not too long ago was taken off
Just-
the air.
yeah,
Right.
Unfortunately.
I throw that out like everybody knows what it was, but it
Yeah.
was an arts program similar to this where they had interviews and they talked about what was happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I kind of felt that they needed to do this. And so I approached the program director at KFAI and said, I see this time slot is opening up and you've kind of temporarily got it set up for this type of thing. Is that what you're interested in? And she said, yes, we want somebody to do this. And I said, well, I'm interested. And she said, well, we have somebody else who's also expressed an interest. Perhaps you two would like to go together because it is a big job.
So you had a
That's a
parallel
huge
interest?
job.
Is that what was going on?
Mhm. And we hadn't met before we got involved in this.
Well, perhaps for a moment we can talk a little bit about the production. I don't know much about producing a radio show, and it sounds kind of complicated. You're working a month ahead on a segment that will happen 1 week. So
Right.
you're kind of juggling, if you will, between weeks, contacting your guests and doing a little research. How does that work?
Exactly. We sent out a press release, which is how you found out about us, and to a large mailing list of arts organizations in the Twin Cities area. And that helped step us forward even more. We get a lot of mail, and mostly press. We ask people to send us their press releases for theater, music, dance, film,
Literature.
video, literature, anything that's happening in the arts, which, as we know in this community, is a lot.
So you cover all the
So-
arts.
We try,
Pretty
yes.
much, I mean, you're open to that.
What we're doing is just picking and choosing. We look through our press releases, or we hear something, or we know somebody that's doing something, and we say, let's do this at this time. And sometimes we tie the shows together in a way to,
In
in a
loose
theme,
themes or tight themes. yeah.
and sometimes not. And we choose music to go in between, and each of us are kind of responsible for our music that goes around our interviews.
And we do engineer our own programs.
So you're doing that while you're interviewing and...
Sometimes, we started out, Nanci didn't know the board, so we started out, I was doing all the engineering, and I would just interview as I was engineering. It's the nature of radio, you can do that. And then now we switch off engineering, so if I'm doing an interview, she watches the board, and if she's doing an interview, I watch the
Which
board.
makes things a lot nicer.
Right.
And,
Kind of a tag team.
But, yeah.
Right.
Now, you had had some
Exactly.
radio experience. Did you ever, I mean, obviously
well,
not
I
with the
did
board,
some
but-
internships last year, both in the NPR newsroom and also with Takeout. And then I went on to do some news reporting at KFAI, and then I also did some independent projects. I taught a radio drama class to kids, and I'm currently teaching a radio documentary class to some kids. And so radio is just something that has just been starting to really, it's something I'm really, really interested in. So, but I'm pretty new at the technical end of it, so I'm still at the point where I go, oh, how do you turn this on? And, but I'm learning, and you have to become certified to run the board at KFAI, which is obvious. You'd have to do that anywhere. So I have finally done that, and
A couple of things before we need to go. You mentioned you're teaching some young people about radio and things. Where does that happen?
that's through a program called Art Start, which is a nonprofit organization, private organization, devoted to kids to give them extracurricular activities like drama and stuff like that. And I proposed to the woman who runs it that we do some radio work, so
And is
we're
that
doing it.
here in Minneapolis? or-
It is in Hopkins and at St. Thomas University, two different
Oh, all
places.
right. Well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, it's
fascinating.
really, really, really fun.
Okay, well, before we go, one more question. Do you have any ideas about upcoming guests or anything interesting that you're going to line up for Artifacts on KFAI?
Boy, we haven't really talked about what we're going to do next month.
We do know one thing we want to do is May Day, which is, the big
May Day.
holiday that's coming up, and we know that we're going to feature one of the May Day parade here that's sponsored by
right.
Heart
We
of the
did
Beast.
talk about
And
that.
we thought that we might potentially make that a show and talk about other May Days or other May events. So we might look at May.
Sounds like we just created a show here. or part of a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that in the
Great.
car on the way home.
Now, one more time. It airs at what time?
Thursday mornings from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
On KFAI.
KFAI 90.3 FM.
Sounds good. We'll be looking forward to listening to
Well, thanks
Artifacts
a
on
lot
the
for-
radio.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nanci.
Good luck. Good luck with your
Teri?
show.
Thank you.
Great. Glad you're here. Now, in a moment, we'll be talking with Busara Whittaker, who's also stepping out as a dancer. But first, we wanted you to take a look at this interesting fact about the arts in Minnesota. Welcome back. It's my pleasure now to introduce Busara Whittaker, somebody that I've had the pleasure of watching as a dancer and choreographer over the years. And we're going to have a conversation about what's going on with her life and the dance troupe that she's part of, Pepo Alfajiri. Welcome. I'm glad you could be here.
Thanks for having
Thank you.
me.
Could we just start out a little bit? I know you do other things, but could we start by talking about Pepo Alfajiri, the company you're with, and its origins? What does Pepo Alfajiri do?
Well, Pepo Alfajiri is a group of men, women, and youth who perform authentic interpretations of ancient African dance. We started in 1982 out of MCAC, which was the Metropolitan Cultural Arts Center, located over on the north side of Minneapolis, 1834 Emerson. Now it's been used as a place for other artists. It's a huge, old, historical library. And Pepo Alfajiri is Kiswahili. That's the language of most people in East Africa, but it's also used as the umbrella language for all Africans to converse with one another. Means spirit before the dawn.
That's what Pepo Alfajiri would translate into English.
And that name really seemed appropriate for what we wanted to do here in Minnesota.
Now, you came to Minnesota and started Pepo Alfajiri. Where did you come from, and what had you been doing before you got here?
Well, my husband and I and one of our children moved from Boston here, Roxbury in Boston, and there I was, again, a dance teacher and student and a midwife. But I was originally born in Senegal and raised in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
So I've kind of been all over.
And dance has been part of your life, sounds like a long time.
Since I was a little girl. Always
Now,
loved it.
your husband is
Michael,
and
Whittaker.
he performs as well?
He's the musical director for the group. He's a drummer. Started out pretty much as a cello player, but we met almost 20 years ago, and he was just starting to change over. He's a student at the New England Conservatory of Music under Rand Blake and just a lot of different jazz artists and musicians. And he got interested in rhythms and started to make drums and delve into different styles of drumming.
Now, who introduced which of you into the dance that you now do that we can see here in Minneapolis? How did that happen?
Well, I started to concentrate on African dance as a dance major at the University of Georgia. And simply because most people here in the West are more familiar with West African dance. We do it all the time anyway. So that was my first introduction, and I've gone on into Congolese dance styles and other styles of dance in different regions of Africa. But it's one of those art forms where you kind of get a chance to feed not only your body, but your mind and your spirit. And you are continuously learning. So even after almost 25 years, I'm still not an expert, and I don't think you ever become an expert. And that's one aspect of this art form that I really
So it's a
enjoy.
continuing process of learning and feeling
research,
it. And
lots of putting puzzle pieces together to make them fit and
that's
understand.
interesting to me when you say the research. Where does a choreographer go? Where do you get your inspiration for the dances you want to come up with? How do you research? What do you think of?
Well, because all the dances that I do are traditional, but usually with traditional African choreographers to bring those dances to life and to stage them is where the choreography aspect of being a dancer comes in. But to know African dance, you have to know the culture of people. And there are like so many different cultures. Talking to folks, reading, looking at what they wear, how they express themselves creatively and religiously, how the houses are made, what they eat, everything you can possibly find out about the people in order to understand the message in the dances and the movements.
Sounds fascinating. What are some of the things you've been working on lately, either shows or performances you've just done or maybe that are coming up? What are you doing these days?
Well, we just finished a collaborative event with 5 different styles of dance, prominent dance artists and artistic directors of groups. We had East Indian dance of northern and southern parts of that country, Spanish flamenco dancing, and Middle Eastern belly dancing, dances from Kuwait. as well as sub-Saharan Southern African
Sounds like a
dance.
wonderful show. And you're all in one program?
One program. We had it at the Great American History Theater. We really look forward to putting it on again, hopefully having this as an annual event for ethnic dancers to come together and showcase their works. We also have a concert coming up, actually Friday evening at Southwest State University.
Oh, in Southwest Minnesota. Okay, that's great. What other kind of places do you perform? Obviously indoors in some of these kind of settings, at colleges and at regular stages, but I've seen you outside as well.
Yeah, we do the whole gamut, street performing and outside on the grass. You can find us, you know, at the Walker as well as at a community church or at a community center. This year has been big for churches, so we've been at Unitarian churches and Presbyterian churches and Lutheran churches,
That's
and working a lot with congregations and presenting liturgies and different aspects of African spirituality in their services.
So you get all kinds of audiences. I mean, sometimes you're out in public and the general public comes, but sometimes you're asked to come into a setting like a college or a church. That's interesting to me.
Most of Pepo Alfajiri's performances are contracted for private organizations. I think we're unofficially about the most popular dance group that is asked to come in. We even go to places like Pillsbury and factories where, you know, in the middle of the day people get a chance to.
Oh, you're talking about Pillsbury, the company?
Yeah, the company, or Honeywell. You know, we've been to quite a lot of different facilities like that where we just go in for the middle of the day and dance for the people.
Well, you're already talking about something I wanted to explore a little bit, and that is, how does someone survive doing what you do? I mean, to survive in the arts as a dancer, a choreographer, I mean, obviously you know what you're doing, but how do you make your livelihood? You must have to do some other things as well. I mean, is there enough work for Pepo Alfajiri, or do you branch into other parts of the performing world?
Well, no, there's not enough work for Pepo Alfajiri. We always want more. There's always more to do. But also as a personal, you know, individual artist, teaching is a big aspect of what I do, more so than performing. So as a residency artist, I'm usually in schools during the daytime and then do different classes in the evenings. I work with theater groups, done things with Heart of the Beast and Foot of the Mountain and Red Eye Theater. Try to do something like that at least twice a year to kind of move out of my element of dance a little bit.
So that's part of what you do to keep yourself fresh and look in a couple other directions. One thing I want to talk about, I know you were involved with the Whittier Community Play in the last couple of years. Can you talk a little bit about what you did there and how you thought that translated into that community effort?
Well, my role in this once in a lifetime experience was that of choreographer, and during that time I did everything from conduct workshops to hold auditions, set up rehearsal times, do some performing myself, critiquing, you know, production meetings, and a little bit of everything.
Sounds fascinating. Now in a moment we're going to take a look at a clip that you were nice enough to bring along of some of your performance, and we'll do that in just a moment. I guess I wanted to ask a broad question about dance in the Twin Cities. Obviously what you do, you've been describing. From your perspective, and you've worked with other kinds of dancers from these different ethnic backgrounds, what is the state of dance in Minneapolis these days? Is it healthy? Are there some challenges ahead? How do you feel that the dance community is doing in spring of 1991 in Minneapolis?
Well, the dance community in Minneapolis is very strong, and it's had a tradition in having that, I think, that really stable foundation, simply because we have the Minnesota Dance Alliance that really serves as a clearinghouse for dancers and provides a lot of services. Also, now that Minneapolis is becoming a lot more diverse, and those communities are moving out and taking a stance as to where their artists are and really putting them out there as well. So I feel that there's lots of room for different dancers and artists of all kinds, especially the diverse ethnic backgrounds, to come in and find your spot and do it.
That sounds good. So the service organization you mentioned, the Minnesota Dance Alliance, is there partly to support some of the overall efforts as well.
They do everything from providing places where you can perform, places where you can teach your classes, referrals, some funding for special projects, networking with other dancers and other dance groups. So just a wide variety of things. They're a wonderful organization, and I think dance is one of the very strong art forms here in Minneapolis.
I would agree. It's been a pleasure to watch it. I think now we're going to turn and take a look at a couple of moments of some dance that you were part of recently. Well, that was nice to see a few moments there of some of the dance that Pepo Alfajiri is involved in. I also wanted to talk with you, Busara, a little bit about what I think is real important in any of the art forms, and that is how the young people get introduced to an art form. And I know that you've had a youth section of Pepo Alfajiri, and you teach, as you mentioned earlier. Can you talk a little bit about who's studying with you and what you teach and how and stuff like that?
Well, we have students that start at age 3, and again, in this type of dance style, because it's communal, you have young and old, you know, male and female, good dancer, and then even not so good dancer. But what's important is that everyone participates. So because African dance is actually really just earth dance, you find a lot of kids who are normally very shy and who don't communicate in other ways can begin to express themselves through movement. And also, because African dance, it has very specific functions and serves as therapy for lots of people. So, you know, a way to work off your stress, a way to get rid of qualities that you have or to embody qualities that you feel that you need. Dance is still used today for that. And because, again, you have older people performing, grandmothers and grandfathers passing down these historical messages to others, I think it remains alive always in your life. Even if you couldn't move, you would still be able to do African dance because you would feel the rhythm and you could dance with your eyes or with your head or with other different parts of your body. So
you're starting to move right now as you talk about it. That's great. That's great. Now, you mentioned kids as young as 3 years old, and that sounds wonderful. Now, as I understand, you've got a young one of your own who's just a little bit younger than that, and he's going to be coming up and dancing? And
Yes, I mean, even in, of course, in utero, he had this very rhythmic kick. So he plays the drums and he sees
doing that
us
now.
dancing. He's learning songs. So, you know, when you grow up in the culture and when you can be there with the teacher and live, because African dance is really the art of real life, you know, everyday normal activities and situations, but with some music and with some rhythm and some song. So you have really normal things, but it's made alive and it's made creative.
Fascinating. Question I have, in many people's minds, I think dance is a young person's activity. I think the kind of the classic is, you know, you start training very young, as indeed with your company. But then by the time you're about 15 or 20, I mean, you're pretty much at the peak. Now I'm thinking kind of the classic ballet style, or perhaps even some of the modern. Now I know those are boundaries that can be broken and people are breaking them, but it doesn't sound like that's necessarily a limitation in what you're describing with Pepo Alfajiri.
Right, right. And also because this is natural movement that complements the way your body naturally moves and all the different stages of your life. So, you know, we move in different ways as we pass through this, and on this road that we travel. So it complements that, and it's okay to dance like you would dance as a 90-year-old great-grandfather, as well as how you would dance if you were a 15-year-old young man.
Sounds good. Where do you work out? Where do you come together to teach each other and to learn? I mean, do you have a studio?
My studio is located in my house. I have this huge house on the north side of Minneapolis and teach out of the attic. And for about the last 3 years, we've been there, and people have gotten used to being there. But I've taught everywhere, from the People Center to other community centers. I've taught at the old Heart of the Beast space. I used to be there and have been kind of all over, but that's where we're based now.
Sounds good. One more question. You talked earlier about kind of visioning and staying alive and looking at different inspiring things. What are you thinking of now? Where do you think you're going to be as a choreographer and a dancer, maybe in 2, 3 years, 5 years? Are you thinking about new things to express, or are you doing research of new dances? What's on the horizon for you?
Yes, I'm doing lots of research, lots of collaborating and networking with other dance masters from other parts of different regions that I have not explored yet in Africa. And just thinking about and working on what dance is going to be like in the year 2000, which I think is going to be a combination of ethnic dances.
Well, I look forward to that. Busara, thank you so much for joining us in Artifacts. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Again.
Well, it's been an interesting show with some guests about a couple of projects that are starting at KFAI Radio, and then Busara Whittaker talking about Pepo Alfajiri and her dance and choreography. It's been a pleasure. I wanted to make one mention as well before we go for artists that might be interested or concerned about the issue of where they live and where they perhaps have a studio or teach. Minneapolis is beginning a 2-year process of looking at its zoning codes, and there will be later in the month of April a public hearing, a forum on rezoning, and it's going to be held at the Minneapolis Downtown Library April 23rd. And for information on that, you could call the planning department at the City of Minneapolis, 673-2036. I believe that number will come up on the screen. And if you have an interest as an artist of any discipline, you might want to make sure you're there for your comments to be heard. Now, don't go away, because in a moment you're going to be seeing a short calendar of events. There's some things coming up in April. But until next month, this is Phill Lindsay. Thank you for watching Artifacts.